Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the 401 Access Denied podcast. I'm the host of the show, Joe Carson, and it's great to kind of be here with you again with another exciting episode, another fun topic, and an awesome guest. So, as mentioned, we're always bringing different episodes and different topics to hopefully give you some insights and some, strategies in order to further your career and apply them to your career and business. So today I'm welcomed with an amazing guest. So Joshua Brown, welcome to the episode. You want to give the audience a little bit of a background about yourself, what you do and some fun things.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Joshua Brown. I'm the Vice President and Global CISO for H&R Block, which is international tax preparation company, primarily U.S. focused, but we have operations in Canada and Australia as well as Ireland, presence in India, and some affiliates in Canada. We have about 10,000 retail locations globally. And also offer a variety of financial services by market. I joined the firm in 2018 as a director of engineering, and I took the CISO seat a little over 3 years ago.
Any interesting things, any interesting hobbies or fun things you like to do?
Too many hobbies and not enough time, which I think is probably a common thing. I play guitar badly, campfire hack style. I try to read, but again, time. I love cooking, but mostly the eating part.
That's always cooking and eating at the same time is always fun.
Yeah, that's right.
Fantastic. I think I echo your the challenge is finding the time to get the balance. So because I love retro gaming and playing guitar as well, but I just wish I had more time to spend on those. So absolutely.
During COVID, my daughter and I built an arcade pedestal, a 4-player arcade pedestal that's got, all of the old, all the way back, right, to Pong. My favorite game growing up was Tron. And so
I remember Tron.
The console, I've got the Tron control stick and the spinner and everything. And I'm not any better at it than I was. Actually, I'm probably worse at it when I was, had fast twitch responses at 15. But that was a good project.
Absolutely. That sounds fun. It's actually one of the things on my to-do list. I do have the 8-bit arcade sticks. I've got the RetroPie, and I do love kind of powering it up once in a while and going back to some of the old games. So absolutely. Sure. But I've always had this plan to kind of build the old wooden stack, and the cabinet, and maybe having a little fridge at the bottom.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
So it's really great having you on, and really excited about today's conversation, where it's going to lead. And it's all about really kind of getting to understand about some of your background and some of the strategies you do as a CISO for a large organization, and also kind of how to make sure that we get the people around us, all thinking the same thing. Cybersecurity awareness and the culture, and how to really build and lead teams for the challenges we're going to face tomorrow. So what's you mentioned you started in engineering. What's some of the background? What was your journey and path into this role?
Yeah, I did not come into InfoSec in the normal path, although I think my path was probably more common 20 plus years ago when I entered the field. I was actually working on a PhD in philosophy when I made kind of the hard left turn to IT. I had a buddy who was working at a startup. This was before the .com bust. And he was just going on and on about how amazing it was, the energy and the innovation and so many smart people. You should really come down here. And I was a grad student. I had no money. And I looked at their job openings. I was like, help desk. I could probably do that. I had done like side gigs in the past, like hardware repair. I did a bunch of that stuff. Had always been a Mac guy. So I asked him, I was like, well, do you guys use Macs? He's like, no, it's 100% PCs. And they had a skills test. So I went to Barnes & Noble. I bought the definitive Windows NT 4.0 administrator guide, read that massive tome cover to cover over the weekend.
It's actually sitting on my shelf over there.
Yeah,
you can actually see it from here.
I should have had it bronzed, right? Because that was my entry point. I took their skills test. I passed it. I got a help desk job. And that kind of set off my formal transition into the world of technology. I worked my way up through that company. I made a move to another slightly larger international company. And then for 14 years, I worked for the Omnicom Group out of New York, which is like this massive conglomerate of it's holding company full of holding companies. It's advertising, public relations, all that kind of stuff. So like a really high piercing tattoo flip-flop to foosball ratio. But, it was an eye-opener for a guy who's into security because that's, I don't want to say it's the last thing on their mind, but like driving client value, the creative side was really the push, right? And so getting security in through the side door meant we had to do a lot of horse trading. We had to make sure that we were bringing reasons that they cared about, not just reasons we cared about. And what we found out is that if you do security with people, they're a lot more amenable to it than if you do it to them. And so, it forces you to do a lot of things that I think a lot of CISOs are just now starting to come around to, which is like, if you want to seat at the big boys table, you have to speak the language of the business. You have to understand what motivates them and what drives them. And you can't be an impediment to what they're trying to do. You have to try and be an accelerator. Easier said than done, right? But I think that's been the transformation of InfoSec over the last, 10 or so years.
Yep. Absolutely. It was born out of IT. I mean, that's where it came out. Technology was where it came from. But over the transition, probably over the last 10 or 15 years, it's really no longer in IT anymore. It's actually in the business side. IT is still the kind of the nuts and bolts infrastructure and how to get it going. But definitely from a security. And I love what you mentioned is it's an accelerator. I've always kind of looked at it as an enabler, but you're absolutely right. It needs to not just enable the business, but it needs to help accelerate it, make it better, and make it much more, improve the experience. So you're absolutely, that's key. What's some of the kind of strategies that you took along the way? What's some of the lessons learned, and what strategies do you apply?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of building a program, you never want to be in a position where your success from a security point of view depends on non-security people making the right decisions. And right, because for obvious reasons, right? And so, we try to create, the phrase I use is create a safe space to try dangerous things, right? So we want to remove as many of the negative options as we can from the equation and do so in a way that doesn't, we don't want to limit people's choice of tooling or how they work or where they work or any of those sorts of things to a degree, right? Operational costs mean you need to standardize on certain tool sets when you grow at scale. But ultimately, like let the developers, for example, make the choice of the tools they want to use, find ways to embrace those, and then automate the guardrails as much as possible so that 99% of what happens operates between those guardrails. And then what you find, so there's a story I like to tell, and I don't know if it's true, which hasn't stopped me from telling it. But my mom said, why, my dear departed mom, why spoil a story for the sake of a few facts? But anyway, the way the story goes is back when the Ford assembly line and, first came online and the Model Ts were starting to roll off, famously, they were available in one color, black. They didn't have brakes initially because they didn't need them. They couldn't go fast enough to need brakes. They added brakes later to enable the cars to go faster. And so we're not trying to put brakes on the business. We're not trying to be an obstacle to the business. We are trying to provide guardrails so the business can be more agile and move faster.
You're absolutely right. I've heard variations of the same kind of, but it is actually, the brakes are to enable from a racing driver perspective. That allows them to accelerate and to go faster. It's absolutely, it's even today when you think about it, it's even braking is what for electric vehicles charges the car. It's actually providing power to go faster when you're finished braking. So I think that's what definitely from a security perspective is that I really like it that when you're talking about the guardrail side of things is to make sure that when you allow someone to kind of do something potentially dangerous, you want to make sure that they do it with the safety and with all of the right controls, and whether it being brakes and seat belts in cars and the airbags and everything and stuff for people to still drive the car in a manner, but actually providing the safety measures and safety controls so they don't have to worry about it. And a lot of the things is, I think one of the things we're learning in security as we go down that path is that we needed to be working in the background, not impeding their productivity, not stopping them from being efficient. And I remember it's one of the lessons I've learned over the years as well, is that my job in security, even today, is I don't even see myself, I see security as my skill set, that's my knowledge, but I see it's evolved into being more of a risk person. And it's not about me being an enforcer of pushing security on people. It's about me listening to how do people do their job. Because ultimately, I want to make sure that I understand how they get measured. Because how I get measured needs to be the same as how they get measured about how do I help them be successful.
Yeah.
And sometimes
Well, you
even the
said
measurements we do is wrong.
well, absolutely right. Most of the time, actually, I think what we measure is the wrong thing. But something you said, I think that's critically important, right? Is you know, InfoSec was an offshoot of IT, right? And the reporting structure historically has been you report to CIO or CTO.
Yeah.
That's changing. We see that broadly. I think part of that is the regulatory space is putting more pressure on CEOs and boards, right? But I think it's also a recognition, like you said, InfoSec is not about IT problems. I mean, it is, right? That's part of it. But InfoSec is about business problem, business risk.
Correct.
And the sooner that more CISOs learn to speak the language of the business, to translate potential impact into potential dollar loss, potential revenue loss, I think the better we'll be, because you need to bring the rest of the C-suite along with you. It's not, it can't be a fight. So your CFO, your chief legal, they need to understand why you're asking for the things you're asking for.
Absolutely.
And then when you're turned down, you have to realize that was a business decision that was made. This is not personal. If it is personal, you're in the wrong company. Our job, like you said, our job is to identify risk, to recommend mitigation to an appropriate level, and to tell them what it costs if they do that and what it costs if they don't do that. And then it's just math, right?
You just picking about one of the previous conversations. It was going back. It was a power station many years ago. This is going to go back quite a long time. And I was brought in to advise the CISO in order to help them, go through the process of getting the budget that they wanted to do, and helping them do how to assess the risk to the budget requirements. And we went through the whole budgetary with the board, presenting to the board and trying to get their approval on the rest of the executives. And right after they said, sorry, budget was denied. You great presentation, but sorry, it's a no. And the CFO and the CEO came later and they said, we want to have a conversation, just kind of give you some feedback. And it was to the point that CEO said, you didn't show me how you're helping us be successful, how you're helping the business grow, and how you're mitigating, from a tangible, quantifiable risk. And I was thinking about it, and that we kind of asked the CFO, how do you measure quantifiable risk? And it's always been a big discussion about how to measure. What's the things? He exactly said what the CFO said to me. He said the cost of doing something versus the cost of doing nothing. And that was literally it. And that was like just the light. And he even turned around and he said that when you go down that process, that depending on what size of the line of business that you're actually measuring and mitigating the risk, he was willing to fund anywhere, between 10% and even up to 30% to protect that line of business. So, and that's not the budget you would get. It's the budget that he would, mix across multiple lines of different mitigations. Insurance, could be documentation, it could be just putting the right controls in place. So there's different methods, but ultimately he was giving us the maths about ultimately the cost of doing something is about how the cost of mitigating should not actually exceed the cost of actually the service that you're providing, and you have to make sure that you're actually staying in line with that. So absolutely, that was a hard lesson, but it was an important lesson that I learned, and I'm glad that I learned it very early in that process.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I think the InfoSec space has been particularly tough for financial people in particular to kind of wrap their heads around, because in one sense, what we do is kind of like homeowners insurance. At least I don't know from where you are, but in the U.S., right? Like I pay for that insurance every single year. It's part of the cost of owning the home. It doesn't prevent my house from burning down. And if I live to the point where I'm ready to sell my house and or I die, and it hasn't burned down, I didn't waste money either, right? It's not a guarantee. We talk a lot internally about how we could spend an inappropriate amount of money on InfoSec, right? It wouldn't necessarily make us any safer. It wouldn't necessarily reduce the risk in an appropriate way. And so it's finding that balance, how much of the percent of the IT budget or percent of overall revenue or whatever, whatever metrics you use, it has to be an appropriate amount. And when I've had kind of off budget cycle requests where I have to go to the board and ask for money, you always categorize them in terms of here's the problem I'm trying to solve. Here's the revenue impact we've seen when this vulnerability gets exercised by a threat actor. Here's what the response costs are. And we can solve that on an annual basis for half the cost what we were paying to deal with the remediations, right? And those type of discussions are a slam dunk. I mean, assuming you've done the math right.
I don't,
But it
absolutely.
gets a lot tougher when you're talking about things that are harder to tie, like how much do you spend on end user education,
Right.
right? And security awareness training. I mean, they're important things. Um, but are they more important than a web application firewall? Like,
Hmm.
are they more important than a second layer of anti-phishing controls? Like,
Hmm.
those are the types of trade-offs we have to make because you can't just keep throwing technology at things.
Absolutely. You just reminded me. We talked about homeowners insurance. It just reminded me actually of an exactly thing that just fits into exactly what we're talking about. Quite a few years ago, I've got in my kitchen, I've got a parquet wooden floor,
Yeah.
and in the same kitchen there is the dishwasher.
Yeah.
And what
I
happened
think
was
I know where this is going.
the dishwasher was just little slow drip leak in the dishwasher, not noticeable, not flooding, just this constant slow. And over time, all of a sudden, I started seeing the parquet floor going up,
Mm-hmm.
and when I pulled out, completely underneath, destroyed. Now, of course, I was paying insurance, which is great because then you're paying so much over the years, but the cost of repairing that was quite significant. It wasn't just the kitchen floor because everything was connected, so the entire floor and the entire apartment had to be done. So you're talking
Oh,
about running into the thousands. But lucky enough, you got
yeah.
the insurance that's covering it. Of course, I had some deductible, so it gets into
Mm-hmm.
how good is your insurance coverage that's actually covering that. Now, of course, after getting it repaired, what I did was I don't want it to happen again. I learned my lesson. So I've actually now I got next to the dishwasher, I've got a leak sensors. So if I had had that before,
Mm-hmm.
the problem wouldn't have happened in the first
Yeah.
place. So
Yeah.
and it's the same in security is that we're looking at what was the potential cost of damage. It could have got worse. It could have even been you could have got damp in the walls, and other things could have escalated up. But you're looking for those indicators of damage. You see them, and then of course that's the mitigation controls. So I learned my lesson definitely. I continue to have the insurance, but I want to make sure I become much more preventable. I don't just
Yeah.
rely on the financial safety net. I've got the preventive measures now in place. And then if we look at, the overall cost is that those little sensors were, like 20, 30 euros and or like,
Mm-hmm.
$30
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
order to protect that from happening in the future. But I'm not going to go and spend like 2,000 euros on the sensor
No. No.
because ultimately, you know, you want to make sure you've got the balance.
Right. Well, isn't it funny too how we say adversity creates opportunity, right? It's a loss event generally shakes loose funds to prevent future loss events. And yeah, in
Absolutely.
hindsight, it would be great if we could prevent those in the first place. But we can't control who attacks us. We can't control when they attack us. All we can control is making their job as difficult as possible. So we hope they don't succeed, but if they do succeed,
Hmm.
then it's all about how quickly we can respond and mitigate. And so, it's funny, we were talking about metrics earlier.
Hmm.
We're in the goal setting phase of the year right now. So we're working on our OKRs, and I was having this discussion with my boss about he wanted to have an OKR around zero serious incidents, and I was like,
Hmm.
well, how about we say zero material incidents, right? Because we
There
already
you
have
go.
a method analyzing whether something's material to us. Serious is a really squishy number. What does that
Hmm.
mean? Does it mean like one person who gives up their credentials in a phishing attack? Does it mean 10,000 people? I don't know. It probably depends on who they are.
Yeah. And what they have
I
access
think
to.
exactly. So if we're going to use this legal language about material and the
Hmm.
FTC safeguard rule and all that kind of stuff, let's just be consistent with it, right? And like you said, we want to have objectives and goals that align us with what the business is trying.
Absolutely, and I think it's really getting consistency as well. It's really making sure that you've got something to refer to.
Yeah.
And I remember the big question mark over the material impact. What did that really mean? And of course, the definitions started getting clarity, and the examples that other organizations were experiencing allowed us to have a much more clear definition as those experiences and impact happen.
Well, and
Uh,
our business is super lumpy. I mean, it's the most bananas business model I've ever seen. We make, I don't know, probably greater than 70% of our revenue in about a 48-hour period each year, like right at the end of tax season. But, it's kind of all hands on deck from Jan 1 to
mhm.
April 15. Like please don't look directly at the internet. You don't want anything bad to happen. And so when we think about materiality, right, the impact to the business, if it happens outside of tax season, um, you know, it it's not a big deal. If something happened to us on April 14th, that would be, potentially catastrophic.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yes.
it's a timing thing too, right?
Absolutely. So one of the things I've got for you as well, okay, you've built an amazing team over the years, in the organization. What were some of the strategies about, choosing and locations and skill sets?
Yeah.
So building that team that you've got, how did you go through the process of deciding what was the best strategy for
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I was brought in as a director from the previous CISO, and he was kind of brought in to reboot the team. He's a transformational CISO guy. And we started rebuilding the team together. And, at that point, this is pre-COVID,
you?
our headquarters are in Kansas City, Missouri. So we required people to be in the office, right? You had to be at headquarters. And for our tax pros, they had to be in an H&R Block office, one of the 10,000 retail locations. That was how you were able to access, confidential data that we need to do our business. And then COVID hit. And we all went, back to our corners and put our comfy pants on and worked away. And we delivered, 2 tax seasons in that fashion with great results. And then, the Great Resignation hit, and I lost 8 out of my 9 managers at the same time.
Whoa, okay.
I mean, and it was, I don't know where you are if it was like this. It was bananas in the US, because you would have people who would leave and immediately get like a 40 or 50% raise. And we weren't necessarily underpaying, although I guess by definition, if that's happening, you are. And so the 2 things changed, right? There was that. We had thought in the Midwest that it would make it easier for us to recruit coastal talent if we could hire from anywhere and let people work from anywhere, which it did. But it also made it easier for the big companies that are on the coast to recruit Midwest talent at a lower price. So we were in competition with the Facebooks and the Amazons and all of that. Regardless, what I focused on was making sure that I had enough core senior talent that we could create junior talent pipelines and keep our talent pipelines full. I focused on hiring managers that were great managers. I think a lot of times we promote engineers to manager positions, and then we're really shocked that they're not good at managing people. Of course, there are some great engineers that make great managers too, right? It's a little more rare. And so I focused on great managers. And then what we did is we created these junior talent pipelines. So some of it we did at our tech park in India. We made relationships with local universities that have masters in InfoSec, coming out of by the thousands. Just incredible level of talent and passion and desire to learn. On the US side, we focused on moms reentering the workforce, second career people. I've got ex-healthcare, I have ex-teachers, I've got a variety of lenses, and we wanted that variety of lenses because if everybody looks like me and thinks like me, they're going to solve problems like me.
Yes.
We want to bring as much diversity of experience to the table as we can in hopes of solving these big brain problems. I've got a guy that runs my forensics and advanced analytics team. He was an undercover cop for the Kansas City, Kansas narcotics division for 14 years, right? He didn't have a ton of tech background, but he had the right mindset. And so, I've used this joke a bazillion times, but it's actually come to be rather true. I look for 2 things when I'm hiring people. Are you smarter than me? I hope you are. And are you not a sociopath? And everything else we can teach. Like, I can't teach you not to be a garbage human, but I can teach you how SQL injection works. I can teach you why, how we should build modules for deploying, infrastructure as code. I can talk to you about how we fight fraud and teach those things. And so once you get a core of people that are committed to the idea of mentoring and teaching and developing the next generation of talent, I'm proud to say my team has some of the highest engagement scores across the entire company globally, which is super weird, by the way, as you know, for InfoSec, right? But they're happy. We don't have a lot of turnover. I've got SOC analysts who stay for 3+ years, which is kind of unheard of, right?
That's,
And I think a big part of it, I mean, I know how corny it is, and there's a lot. I lurk on a lot of the subreddits that are InfoSec and Cybersec and anti-work, some of those, right? And it's so corny to say, like, well, we're a family, and well, my family doesn't pay me. But I think it's important for people. You don't have to be great friends, but you do have to be cordial. And as it turns out, I've been able to build a team people genuinely like spending time with each other. They like working together. Even though we're scattered all over the world now, we bring the team together, the whole team together once a year for InfoSec Palooza. And we bring the extended leadership team together 3 or 4 times a year for many summits. And that face-to-face is still important for
Absolutely.
building relationships. You have to be, just super intentional about that now that we're all distributed.
Yeah, the networking and social aspect of when you bring people together, it creates it gets that environment for creating ideas, and also gets people to kind of share knowledge. And but I think I really admire again your strategy, because I strongly believe in surrounding ourselves with as many smart people as possible, but also getting them where they're so passionate and so excited to learn. Is that continuous learning? Is people who have the kind of who have been kind of in that process of continuous learning, that they will keep learning. And then if you can actually turn them into teaching other people, that's just a recipe for success. If you can teach the teacher type of scenario, because that's something that, and again, it allows that continuous career growth. If you get people to show that, they can turn into managers. And I would absolutely agree with you that not everyone makes a great manager. They might have great technical skills, but it's more the kind of people interactions and development side of things that becomes also important as well. So what's your kind of future for going beyond in the next generation? How are you going to kind of share your skills and with others and create next generation of CISOs? What's your plan around that?
I mean, I think using my voice and my platform to amplify other people's voices is a big thing. Taking on mentees is a big thing. I used to do a lot of more technical talks. Obviously, as you get farther away from the keyboard, it gets less technical. But I am passionate about talent and building this. I was on a panel the other night for women in technology. And we got a lot of questions from the audience about, just the kind of dismal hiring experience right now, especially for entry-level people. Yeah. And there's, I've been speaking out on this for a while, but there's just a ton of gatekeeping in our industry. And I think some of that comes from how we split off from IT. There didn't used to be degrees in cybersecurity. So then the certification farms popped up, right?
Yes.
And then it was chasing certifications and how much money am I paying to maintain my certifications and how many extra letters do I need after my name? And you get to these places where you're like, well, it's entry-level security engineer job, but you need 5 years of experience and, you need to have your CISO. And we're not giving people a chance to get in through the door. And I think it's amplified even more when you look at underserved communities who don't have access to pay thousands of dollars for a training class, right?
Absolutely.
Who maybe didn't go to college. We get so hung up on these pieces of paper that we don't look at the person and what they bring to the table. And again, I recognize I'm very fortunate to be in a company large enough that gave me the grace to build a core team and let me take on the risk of training a young team. I got to tell you, the first couple of years, I knew I had super smart people who loved what they did and were really passionate about it. But I didn't know how we react when we faced a real adversary. That's always the test. And it happens eventually to everybody. Some people more than others. And, I've been delighted at how the team reacts because we're a big target. I don't want to, cast any aspersions out there that we're somehow special and better than the bad guys. Like, they are well funded, they are well motivated, they do not have budgetary constraints or time constraints.
They don't have time constraints either.
Yeah, and they only have to be right once. So when we're thinking about protecting like a cloud infrastructure plus a massive retail, and we have a hugely seasonal workforce. We onboard and offboard like 60, 70,000 tax pros every single year. So these are, they typically skew older, they skew non-technical because they're accountants, right? And they have clients who interact with them in a variety of ways that we would prefer they didn't, like email and personal phones and all that kind of stuff. And so the attack surface is pretty significant, and you have to build a team that's ready to address that challenge, right?
Be very dynamic and practice and simulate a lot of times. It's just kind of that working together. I think the more teams kind of simulate, practice, and kind of share and kind of learn, the better you get at being prepared for when things do happen.
That's right.
So it just reminded me of one organization I used to assist with was in the university side, what they had is they had one fourth of the workforce rotate every year.
Yeah. Yeah.
One year students get unprovisioned, and the next year students get reprovisioned. So it's just that continuous rotation. And
Yeah.
it's very challenging. I think that's.
Oh yeah. Campus networks are I mean, good for them, the people that work those jobs, because it's important, but man, what a challenging environment to try and protect.
Constantly changing. And it's, we always look at the kind of onboarding and offboarding process, joiner, leaver, mover type of scenarios, and the provisioning entitlements and stuff. But yeah, campuses, universities, any educational board, that's that constant change. It's just how they keep up with it all is impressive alone. So, and sometimes with few resources. So
sure.
So what's
well,
what,
and I think go ahead.
Go ahead.
One of the things I was going to say, I think you got to be so disciplined about how you approach your craft in your industry, like whatever your market segment is. I think we get, a lot of times it's easier to buy technology than it is to, to solve problems other ways, right? Like policy and procedure is the meat and potatoes, but we're like, well, it's way easier to just go buy a tool that does that for me. And I think probably every single shop out there could spend multiple years just on the tooling they already have, getting it into an optimal state of function. We don't have to just keep throwing technology at problems.
We get technical debt.
Always, right? And I think, yes, the threat actors change and we have to adapt to those things, right? But that's really about building the right fundamentals into your program so that you can adapt without having to wholesale rip something out and put in technology.
Absolutely. I completely agree. One of the things is that when we're investing in technology and tools, it's so important to make sure that, we invest in the people, the processes, and the knowledge to make sure, even in the systems, just to make sure it's deployed with as much efficiency. And also that it's doing a better job from the experience that those who are going to use it had before. It always has to be continuous, that their experience is much better. It should not be more difficult to use the tools of tomorrow. And that's something we have to kind of reinforce all the time. What's some of the ways that you stay up to date? What's some of the places you go for knowledge?
I mean, I think, you talk to enough security people that one of the common things that keeps us all getting up in the morning and putting on clothes and going to work is the constant change, right? That's something that we embrace, that we love, because this job never gets stale. I was talking to a colleague the other day and I was like, we say never a dull moment, but I would sure love a handful of dull moments that I could just sprinkle around the rest of my life. But it's, and I'm starting to understand why the burnout level is so high for CISOs and why they only stay an average of 2.5 years or something. Yep. Like the pressure's pretty crazy. So you really have to love it. If you don't love it, you're going to have a bad time of it. Probably my favorite way, I use Bentley. And it just feeds in a bunch of different sources, right? So Anton's on security and all the major vendors, the Akamai's and the Palo Altos and the CrowdStrikes and the Delineas and, all of those feeds come in. Krebs on security, dark reading.
Good old Brian.
Exactly, right? So like every day I've got like the top 100 articles and I can just skim through those really quickly, decide the ones that I think are worth a little bit of time. You can save them in there. Like it's Bentley. It's a great way to do that. Just to aggregate all. It used to be RSS readers. I'm not sure if anybody uses RSS anymore.
I don't think anyone used to use them in the past. That's one method I used in the past in order to stream all the information to me, so I get a summarization of everything. But I have to check it out because it's something I haven't. Most of the stuff I've got my default kind of pages I go to, and I kind of skim through them every day. But yeah, I might take a look and see if I can streamline it with Bitly.
And big fan of Ars Technica. I mean, it's more of a tech site. They do some security stuff, which is, and what I like about them is when they do a security thing, they go pretty deep. So that's nice. I've kind of given up on conferences, not completely, but they've just turned into trade shows, really.
Absolutely.
So finding, the good ones, like the B-sides, I think is still excellent. I always encourage people, look for the security community in your city. For us, it's SecKC. I used to live in St. Louis. It was STLSec when I was there. And even if it's a drinking club for people with a security problem, you're making connections, you're talking to peers, you probably have a lot of the same problems. And I think that's super valuable, just to stay up with what's happening in your local community as well.
Absolutely. That's wise, right? I mean, I had the same. I love the B-sides. Actually, was just yesterday at the B-sides talent. So, and
Yeah, awesome.
I didn't go to the sessions. All I did was network. That was my
Yeah,
main. It
right.
was just
Yeah,
the community, just to see the people, because sometimes you don't see them that often, but when you do, you share so much experiences and ideas and new things, and it's always great to do that. And even I still go to the big events, the RSAs and the black hats,
mhm,
and the sessions are a bit mixed. Some of the sessions are really good, educational, but I tend to organize it so I look for the speakers that I know is going to talk about something that is compelling and interesting,
yeah,
and then I go to the topic, and then I get recommendations from friends, and then so you kind of build out your plan so that you're going to make the most benefit. But you're absolutely, it's the community that makes the event so much kind of more valuable. So
yeah. I used to
so
love DerbyCon, in Louisville. Like it
DerbyCon,
was just the right size. I went to DEF CON years ago. My red team went this year, and it's gotten so big that it's hard to even get into the talks that you want to see, right? If they've got 40,000 attendees, like it's you may be able to fit
this year
1,000.
was much better. This year was much better.
Yeah,
DEF CON
that's
was,
good to hear.
because they had to change. I agree, because over the years, I think the last time I remember it was really good was at Caesar's Palace. It was
Mhm.
more spacious. It was kind of more
Yes.
designed for a conference space. And
Yeah.
then over the years, when they moved it to Flamingo and the Forum, it just felt so cramped. And I couldn't get into half the talks I wanted to, and I spent most of the time queuing and going between those small corridors. I just
Yeah.
became kind of like, you end up having to really plan and think about who you're going to meet and when you're going to meet. This year was way much better when they moved it to the convention center. So
Oh,
much
that's
more
good.
space. Uh,
Yeah.
there was some technical things with audio and sound bleeding
Mm.
into other talks and stuff, but the space meant I got pretty much 90% of the talks I wanted to see.
Oh, that's
So
great.
it was definitely, it's a much better this year. But you're absolutely right. Is sometimes it can be quite a challenge. So one question: what resources, what places would you recommend the audience to go to and to get more information, or to or even maybe if they have questions for you, or is there books or podcasts or something
Yeah,
that you recommend they go to?
sure. I mean, first, like, you're welcome to hit me up on LinkedIn, business, Facebook for business, as we call it. So that's probably the easiest way to reach me. I think our industry is so broad. You have to find the things that you really care about. You can't consume all of it. Even at the CISO level, you certainly can't. So finding the resources, like a great place to go is like if you're a network security and you happen to be a Palo shop, like start with the Palo blogs and move out from there. But really, it's about making relationships with people. And so going to your local, SecKC events, for example, if you're in Kansas City, going to these conferences, meeting up with these people, and finding out what other people are looking at. I'm at the point where I'm mostly reading management books at this point in my career instead of the NT Administrator's Guide anymore. I'm working through a book right now called The Right Kind of Wrong by Amy Edmondson, and it talks about this critical. Brene Brown's another great inspirational leader. I think she says that growth comes to the point of struggle. Which I think is 100% correct. We don't celebrate failure enough. Everybody's afraid of failing instead of recognizing that it's a learning experience. Obviously you want to fail in the right way. So that's kind of what the right kind of wrong is about. Like if you're going to be wrong, you want to be wrong in a way that drives learning, drives growth, drives progress. So I'm very much into that message right now.
Fantastic. I'm going to have it on my reading list very soon. So,
Excellent. Excellent.
Joshua, it's been awesome having you on. Many thanks for sharing your experiences and journey with us. And I'm pretty sure that the audience is going to get so much value out of this, to really go back and think about how they can really mature their strategies and think about streamlining and building great security teams. So many thanks for being on. It's so great having you. Any final words of wisdom you want to share? Any things that you want to?
No, it's been my pleasure. Great conversation. I hope this is valuable. And if people want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, please do. I respond to everything that comes in that's not a sales pitch. So happy to help if I can.
I'm sure they'll be reaching out at some point. So for everyone, this is the 401 Access Denied podcast, bringing you kind of thought leaders, education, knowledge, and really to make your career an exciting one. And so tune in every 2 weeks for other episodes. Go back and take a look at some of the previous ones. So everyone out there, stay safe, take care, and all the best, and goodbye.